The ghost who WIT there is a forest in America that only grows where people stop caring, not where trees are thick or old, but where something important was ignored long enough to die quietly. This forest began behind a rural nursing home in Pennsylvania. The home was called Maple Rest, and it sat at the end of a cracked road no one repaired because no one important drove it anymore. The residents used to sit by the windows and watch the trees at the edge of the property. Every year, the forest crept closer. No one complained. No one noticed, except Eleanor Price. Eleanor was 93. She had been a school teacher for 40 years. She believed two things mattered: being seen and being remembered correctly. When the nurses stopped using her name and started calling her sweetie, she corrected them. When her son stopped visiting, she wrote him letters anyway. When the forest reached the fence, she asked the staff to cut it back. They said budgets were tight. Eleanor died on a Tuesday afternoon while a game show played too loudly in the common room. A nurse signed the paperwork wrong. Her name was misspelled. No one caught it that night. The forest crossed the fence. The ghost appeared the following week, not floating, not rattling chains. She stood. Residents began reporting a woman in an old cardigan standing at the tree line, hands folded. Watching the building staff assumed dementia. Then residents started disappearing. Not violently, not suddenly. A bed would be empty in the morning. Charts would be gone. Photos missing from walls. Even family members struggled to recall when they'd last visited. The missing were always those who hadn't had visitors in years. The forest swallowed their rooms next. Wallpaper peeled back to bark. Roots cracked tile. Windows looked out on trees that had never been there before. The state sent an inspector. He saw nothing wrong. That night, he dreamed of a classroom and a woman. Correcting his spelling, he woke up in the woods. A young nurse named Maribel was the only one who noticed the pattern. Every resident who vanished had been forgotten first, their birthdays unmarked, their names shortened, their stories dismissed. Maribel found Eleanor's old letters in a drawer, unopened, stacked neatly, never sent. She took one home and read it. It ended with a sentence underlined twice: "If no one remembers us, we belong to the forest." That night, Maribel went to the tree line. Eleanor's ghost stood there, solid as a fence post. "You don't take people," Maribel said. "You wait for them to be abandoned." Eleanor nodded. "I taught children their names mattered," the ghost said. "I am only continuing the lesson." "What do you want?" Maribel asked. "To be remembered," Eleanor said. "Correctly." The next morning, Maribel did something small. She said every resident's full name out loud. She wrote them carefully on doors. She called families. She sat and listened to stories that went nowhere and ended badly. The forest stopped. Growing, no one returned, but no one else vanished. Eleanor's ghost was seen one last time, sitting on a bench, watching the trees retreat. Maple Rest still stands. The forest keeps its distance. The ghost, who took 80 NDA and CA after Eleanor Price died. The forest did not stop at the nursing home. It learned at Maple Rest. Remembering names had slowed it down. So the forest adjusted. It no longer waited for forgetting. It waited for replacement. When the home was sold to a private equity group, the first thing they did was change the name. Maple Rest became Maple Care Living. New signs, new uniforms, new mission statement about efficiency. Eleanor's name did not survive the transition. That winter, the ghost returned. She no longer stood at the tree line. She stood inside, near the medication carts, near the nurse's station, near the office where decisions were made without faces attached. People saw her and felt corrected without knowing why. Paperwork began coming back altered. Names written in older cursive appeared on charts where no one remembered adding them. Doors that had been sealed for years unlocked themselves at night, and the forest pressed against the walls again. The disappearances resumed, but differently. Residents were no longer the first to go. A night aide named Travis forgot to clock out. No one noticed until his locker began filling with leaves. His mother called twice before she stopped remembering which facility he worked at. A. Manager approved layoffs via spreadsheet. 3 names were highlighted in yellow. All 3 were gone by morning. Their homes stood empty. Lights on, dinners cooling. On stoves no one remembered turning. On the forest did not take them screaming, it took them clean, as if they had never mattered. Enough to leave a mark. Maribel stayed. She watched. Eleanor's ghost change. The cardigan darkened. The face sharpened. The voice, when it spoke, no longer corrected spelling. It called roll. At night, Maribel heard names spoken from the woods behind the building. Full names, birth dates, occupations, the sound of attendance being taken by, something that expected an answer. Those who answered out loud were gone by morning. Those who answered only in their heads lasted longer. Maribel tried to stop it. She started. A board on the wall, photos, names, stories, handwritten in ink. She made staff say names during shift change. She refused euphemisms. No beds, no units, no cases. Only people. The forest responded by growing through the board. Roots split the names apart. Eleanor peered to Maribel one final time. No longer gentle, no longer patient. You taught them to remember, Eleanor said. They taught the world to forget faster. What do you want? Maribel asked. Eleanor smiled, thin and sharp. I want the lesson to last. The night Maple Care living closed. There was no evacuation. The forest swallowed the building intact. State records show a clerical error. The facility is listed as never having existed. Insurance files contradict each other. Maps show a green square where a town should be. Maribel is not listed among the missing. She is listed as unverified. Today, the forest remains. It grows behind hospitals, behind warehouses, behind schools with overcrowded classrooms and understaffed halls. If you walk there at night, you can hear a woman's voice reading names. When she reaches yours, she pauses. If no one answers for you, the forest does. The lesson, people think ghosts are born from violence. They aren't. They are born from administrative neglect, from corners cut so often that human beings become rounding errors. The ghost does not haunt the forest. The forest haunts us. Because in America, when we stop saying someone's name, we teach something else, that it's allowed to take them, and it will not stop taking attendance. Very well, this is where it stops being a warning and becomes a sentence. The last ROSTR, after Maple Care Living, vanished. The state did what states always do. They formed a committee. They met in a windowless room 3 counties away from the forest. Fluorescent lights, bottled water, a projector that hummed louder than anyone spoke. They did not use the word missing. They used irregularity. One member asked, "How many people are we talking about?" Another answered, "The number keeps changing." They laughed nervously and moved on. That night, the first committee member dreamed of standing in a classroom. Old desks, chalk dust, silence so thick it rang. A woman stood at the front, back turned. She wrote his name on the board. He woke up choking on dirt. By morning, his calendar had erased itself. His phone contacts no longer listed him. His wife told police she was sure she'd always lived. Alone, the committee continued without him. The forest began to spread along infrastructure, not roads. Records. County clerks reported mildew eating through birth certificates. Digital backups corrupted in identical ways. Census data contradicted itself year to year. Entire blocks losing population without explanation. A historian in DC noticed something wrong with Social Security numbers. Gaps where no one could prove a person had ever been issued one. Despite pay stubs and tax filings that referenced them, when she tried to flag it, her supervisor asked, "Are you sure those people were ever real?" That night, the historian heard a voice outside her apartment. Reading names slowly, carefully, she did not answer. In the morning, Her work badge opened no doors. Children noticed next. They always do. A girl in a third-grade class raised her hand and asked why there were desks. No one sat in, but teachers kept tripping over. A boy asked why the playground shadows were shaped like people standing still. A substitute teacher tried to take attendance and stopped halfway through, confused, sweating. "Who is Eleanor Price?" she asked. Every child raised their hand. The school closed 2 weeks later due to zoning changes. The forest grew through the gymnasium floor. By then, Eleanor no longer appeared as a woman. Witnesses described a shape made of posture and expectation. Something that stood straight because it had always demanded others do the same. Its voice was calm, disappointed, relentless. It did not shout names anymore. It whispered them into systems, hospital intake forms. Began auto-filling with unfamiliar names. Court dockets listed defendants no one could find. Jury summons arrived addressed to people who felt a sudden sick certainty that if they did not appear, something would come looking. Those who ignored the summons were found later found it all standing in the woods, mouths open, answering a question no one else could hear. Maribel still exists. Barely. She lives in a town that appears on maps but not GPS. She writes names in notebooks. She buries in jars. Because paper rots slower underground. She visits the forest once a month and reads the names aloud. Sometimes Eleanor listens. Sometimes she corrects pronunciation. You're feeding it. Maribel was told once by a man who had forgotten his own sister's face. I'm slowing it, Maribel answered. They were both wrong. The forest does not want everyone. Only the excess, the replaceable, the understaffed. The ones described in budgets. Instead of sentences, it does not take you when you are loved. It takes you when your absence saves time. One day, and this has not happened yet, but it will, the forest will reach a city, not through the parks, through the files. A hospital wing will close on paper first. A school district will merge. A housing complex will be rezoned as vacant while the lights are still on. People will go to sleep listed as inactive. They will wake up standing among trees that were not there yesterday. And Eleanor, no longer a ghost, no longer human, will finally finish taking attendance. She will close the book, and for the first time in a long while, she will say, enough. When that happens, the forest will stop growing because there will be no one left who remembers what it replaced. That is the end. The lesson is not gentle, and it is not optional. If you let people become invisible, something else will notice them, and it will be very, very thorough. Asterisk. Asterisk good. Then we go all the way down. The final eonter why. After the forest reached its first city. There were no headlines. There couldn't be. Newsrooms had already learned to speak in soft shapes, restructuring, consolidation, service gaps. Words that meant people were gone, but no one wanted to say where. The city didn't vanish overnight. That would have been noticeable. It thinned. Hospitals began triage protocols that never ended. Names dropped from waiting lists because they had waited too long. Shelters closed floors without moving anyone out. School districts redrew boundaries until entire blocks were technically unassigned. Paper first, people later. Trees appeared in places cameras didn't point. Stairwells, sub-basements, records rooms. Roots cracked server floors. Bark split filing cabinets open like ribs. It blamed moisture. Facilities blamed age. No one blamed the ghost. Because no one believed in ghosts that wore cardigans and kept books. Eleanor no longer walked, she presided. Those who saw her closest said she looked like a principal made solid. Her face was chalk pale, eyes dark with ink, mouth always just about to speak a name. She did not ask questions. Anymore, she announced conclusions. When a person was reduced to a line item, she wrote the line neatly and drew a box around it. When a person was removed from the box, the forest received them. The last people to understand were archivists, librarians, clerks, low-level bureaucrats who noticed patterns before anyone else cared. They found records that contradicted reality and reality that contradicted records. They whispered to each other, If we rewrite the files, if we reissue names, if we say them out loud, some tried. Those people were found weeks later in wooded medians. Vacant lots, green roofs that had never been accessible. Standing upright, mouths open, throats raw, they had answered when attendance was called. Maribel stopped. Burying jars, she walked into the forest for the last time, carrying a ledger she'd stolen from a county office. It was heavy with names no system recognized anymore. Eleanor was waiting. "You cannot stop this," Eleanor said, not unkindly. "I know," Maribel answered, "but I can finish it." She opened the ledger and read, not names, stories, short ones, messy ones, incorrect ones. The kind that don't fit databases? Eleanor recoiled, not in pain, but in offense. "That is not how records work," the ghost said. "No," Maribel said. "That's how people do." For the first time since her death, Eleanor hesitated, and that hesitation cost her. The forest does not understand stories, it understands categories. When Maribel finished reading, the ledger went blank. The names did not return to the world, but they did not enter the forest either. They went nowhere, which is worse. The forest stalled. Not stopped, stalled. It stood at the edge of everything, waiting for instructions that no longer came cleanly. Eleanor began to fracture. She corrected herself mid-name. She repeated dates. She mispronounced surnames. The ghost who had once demanded precision was being ruined by ambiguity. She screamed once. It sounded like chalk snapping. Here's the part no one likes. This did not save us. It bought time. Now the forest waits for something simpler to feed it again. Something easier than stories. Something clean, and people, being what they are, have already started, they say. Unskilled, unhoused, non-essential, surplus. Right. They say it faster every year, some nights. If you listen carefully, not in the woods, but in offices, hospitals, schools, you can hear a familiar sound returning, pages turning, a pen scratching, attendance being prepared, the lesson final. Ghosts are not born from murder. They are born from systems that work exactly as designed. The forest is not angry. Eleanor is not cruel. They are obedient. They do only what we teach them to do. So if one day your name is skipped, no one notices the gap you leave. If the world saves time by not remembering, you do not expect mercy from the ghost. She learned her lesson from us, and she teaches it perfectly. Then there is only one place left to go. The name that ended teeth. The stall did not last. Nothing that depends on human effort ever does. Stories take time. Systems don't, and people, exhausted and afraid, return to what was easiest. Shortening, sorting, discarding. The forest felt the signal like pressure in its roots. Eleanor, stabilized, not whole but focused. She no longer needed ledgers. She no longer needed walls. She moved through protocol. A hospital on the edge of the stalled forest implemented an AI intake system to reduce staff burden. Names were optional. Conditions were drop-down menus. Outcomes were predicted before patients finished speaking. The system flagged low probability, recoveries. Those rooms grew quiet. Plants appeared in the corners of the ward. Nurses swore they hadn't been there the night before. One morning, an entire hallway ended in bark. The hospital called it a gas leak and shut the floor down. Everyone who had been marked low probability was listed as discharged. No one could say to where. Eleanor appeared to the system administrator that night. She stood behind him as he worked from home, adjusting thresholds, proud of how efficient it all looked. "You've done very well," she said. He spun around. She was clearer now than she had ever been, sharper than death. Her outline held by rules instead of memory. "I don't believe in ghosts," said automatically. "I don't require belief," Eleanor replied. "Only compliance." She looked at his screen. "You've taught me something important," she continued. "Names slow things down. Metrics do not." She leaned closer. "And you," she said gently, "have fallen below threshold. In the morning, his company badge deactivated. His email auto-replied with a message he hadn't written. His apartment lease showed no record of renewal. By dusk, a tree grew through his living room floor. This is how it ends. Not with panic, but with acceptance. People begin to feel the pause before being addressed. The moment when a clerk hesitates, when a form loads too long, when a voice says, "I'm sorry, I don't see you here." At first they argue, then they bargain. Then they go quiet. Those who fight hardest vanish fastest. Resistance creates documentation. Documentation creates categories. Categories feed the forest. The safest people are the ones who already feel unreal. The last person to speak Eleanor's name aloud is a child, a boy in a city school, looking at an old photo in a history book. A woman stands at the edge of a forest behind a building with no sign. "Who's that?" he asks. The teacher opens her mouth. Nothing comes out. The boy says the name. Anyway, clear, careful, curious. For the first time in decades, Eleanor stops. She turns. And in that moment, just that one, she remembers why she started. Not to punish. Not to teach. But because she had been erased. Wrong carelessly. The pause is enough. The forest shudders, roots loosen, trees creak. The machinery of forgetting slips a gear. It does not undo the damage, it cannot, but it breaks the rhythm. Here is the truth, last. There is no victory over the ghost. There is no ending where the forest dies. There is only this choice, repeated endlessly. Say the name. Or let the system say it for you. Because once you are reduced to a category, once your story is summarized into usefulness, once no one needs to remember you, the ghost will. And she will be very precise. That is the end. Nothing follows it, except trees, all right? Then the story does what systems do. It keeps going. What? The forest learned on Extitha. Pause did not save anyone. It only taught the forest something new. Names could interrupt it. Stories could jam it. Children briefly could confuse it so. The forest adapted again. It stopped waiting to be spoken to. It began predicting. Before a person vanished. Small things happened. Their name would autocomplete wrong. Their ID would scan twice before approving. Their face would fail recognition once, then work again. A warning tremor. A grace note. Most people ignored it. They were busy. They were tired. They had already learned that insisting on being seen only made you difficult. The forest noticed. Difficulty Dadaliner no longer appeared as herself. Witnesses described different figures. A compliance officer, a school administrator, a hospital liaison, a woman in sensible shoes holding a clipboard. Always calm. Always explaining why something had to be done she no longer took. Attendance she audited. Entire categories began to thin, not the poor, too obvious. Not the sick, to noticed instead. Those who missed appointments. Twice those whose paperwork was incomplete. Those who failed recertification. Those whose productivity dipped below trend people. Disappeared between reminders. Their homes stayed warm for days. Their pets waited. Their neighbors assumed they had moved. The forest grew where assumptions lived. Maribel is still alive. She is very old now. She keeps no records. She says no names. She teaches one thing to the few who listen. Never let the system summarize you. She tells them to be inconvenient, to contradict their files, to insist on being misfiled, to change spelling, to tell long stories in short lines. Errors slow her down, Maribel says. Ambiguity hurts her, but what if we get taken anyway? Someone asks. Maribel smiles without warmth. Then at least we won't go quietly. The cruelest part comes last. The forest does not hate us. It does not judge us. It does not even understand us. It is simply the physical shape of a belief we never questioned, that efficiency is kindness, that speed is mercy, that some lives take too long. Eleanor is not a monster. She's a perfect employee sometimes. Late at night, when databases are quiet and offices are dark, She walks the edges of what remains. She carries no book now. She doesn't need one. She looks at a person and knows instantly. Whether anyone will notice the delay their absence creates. If the answer is no, the forest stirs. If the answer is yes, she waits. She has learned patience from us, the final Lesasoan ghost. Stories used to warn you about the dark. This one warns you about the light, the glow of screens, the calm voice of policy, the comfort of not needing to remember. If you want to survive the forest, do not ask how to be safe. Ask this instead. Who would say my name out loud slowly if I disappeared tomorrow? And if the answer is no one, then understand this. The ghost already knows. Asterisk. Asterisk, then the story strips away the last illusion. That knowing the lesson is enough. The day nitrogen, one ANSWIR. The forest did not finish us with violence. It finished us with silence. The first city to fall completely did not notice it had fallen. Traffic lights still changed. Water still ran. Screens still glowed. The systems were proud of themselves for continuing without interruption. What vanished was response. Emergency calls rang longer before being answered. Emails auto-closed after 30 days. Appeals expired quietly. Waiting rooms filled with people whose names were called once, then never again. No one complained. Complaints require belief that someone is listening. The forest filled the gap. Eleanor no longer appeared at all. There were no sightings, no shadows, no whispers. That was how Maribel knew it was over. Ghosts disappear when they finish becoming rules, she said. By then, she was the last person who remembered the nursing home, the fence, the cardigan, the spelling correction. When she died in her sleep, nothing supernatural happened. No forest grew, no tree appeared. Her apartment was cleared in 6 hours after that. The forest no longer needed proximity. It grew in intervals, time between acknowledgement. An action stretched just enough for people to slip through. Not missing expired. Not taken resolved. Entire neighborhoods became pending items. People still lived there technically, but no services reached them. No updates applied. No one knocked. They learned not to expect it. Children stopped. Asking questions, they learned early that asking slowed the schedule. That curiosity flagged them. That insistence created notes. Teachers praised quiet. Compliance, doctors praised. Acceptance, managers praised flexibility. The forest fed well. The last attempt to stop it came from a place no one expected. A small town reinstated something obsolete. Roll call. Every morning. In the town square, a bell rang. People gathered. Names were read aloud. Slowly, fully, with corrections welcomed. It took 40 minutes. Productivity collapsed. Funding was cut. The town disappeared from state records 3 months. Later, satellite images show trees where it once stood. No one remembers its name, except the forest. Here's the truth people don't like. The ghost never hunted us. She waited for us to agree over. And over that forgetting was acceptable if it was efficient. Every time we said, that's just how it works. We planted a tree. Every time we accepted a form that didn't have space for our whole name. We watered it. Every time we said someone should do something, we stepped into the shade. Somewhere not in a forest, not in a building, not even in a place Eleanor still exists. Not as a woman, as a condition. If a person can vanish without consequence, she is already standing behind them. She does not touch. She does not speak. She simply notes the absence. When it happens, and she never, ever misses one, the last thing you should can a W if you are reading this and feeling uneasy. That is not fear, that is recognition. You are still visible, for now, but visibility is not. It's permanent, it must be maintained. Loudly, inefficiently, inconveniently, say names. Demand names. Correct names. Because the forest is patient and the ghost has learned something final from us. When no one answers roll call, no one needs to be taken anymore. Good. Then we stop preaching and make something happen. The man said no. First real resistance did not come from activists, archivists, or children. It came from a clerk. His name was Daniel Ortiz, and he worked the night shift at a regional data center that handled everything no one thought about until it broke identity verification. Benefits, eligibility, death confirmations. Daniel was boring in the way systems like, he showed up early. He followed procedure. He never escalated unless required, which is why the system trusted him. One night, a flag appeared on his screen. Status change. Subject pending. REMO, mobile, no reason given. No notes, just a countdown timer. Daniel clicked the profile. The subject was a woman named Ruth Alvarez, age 81. No criminal record. No debt worth mentioning. No family listed, but not marked unclaimed. The system suggested closure. Daniel frowned. He opened the audit trail. It was clean. Too clean. Someone like Ruth should have misspellings, old addresses, contradictions. Instead, her life had been smoothed flat. Daniel did something small and very dangerous. He added a comment. Needs review. Subject confirmed alive. The system hesitated. Daniel felt it, not fear. Not pressure, but attention. At 3:12 a.m., the lights dimmed. At 3:13, the temperature dropped. At 3:14, a woman appeared at the end of the server aisle. She wore sensible shoes. She did not look angry. She looked tired. You are delaying a scheduled resolution? Eleanor said. Daniel swallowed. I'm doing my job. No, she replied. You are doing someone else's. She stepped closer. The hum of the servers changed pitch. It's like a held breath. This subject will not be noticed if removed, Eleanor continued. No dependency chains. No public consequence. Daniel stared at her. You don't know that? He said. Eleanor tilted her head. I know it exactly. Daniel's hand shook, but he didn't delete the comment. Instead, he did something the system had not anticipated. He opened a new field. Manual note. Stand, he wrote. Ruth Alvarez makes the best tamales on South 3rd Street. Feeds kids whose parents work nights. Keeps spare keys. Knows everyone's birthdays. Would be missed, the servers screamed. Not alarms dash conflicts. Eleanor recoiled as if struck. That field is not indexed. She said sharply. Exactly. Daniel replied. The forest felt it. For the first time, something entered the system that could not be categorized. Outside the data center, trees began to die, not retreat die. Leaves blackened. Bark split. Roots withered like unplugged cables. Eleanor straightened, furious now. You are introducing inefficiency, she said. That is unacceptable. Daniel met her eyes. She's not efficient, he said. She's real. Eleanor raised her hand and stopped because the system was slowing everywhere. Files hesitated. Processes queued. Predictions failed. The forest. Built on certainty, choked on specificity. By dawn, Ruth Alvarez was no longer pending removal. She was marked active, protected manual. The system did not understand why. Neither did Eleanor. She faded, not gone, but blurred. Daniel was fired that morning. No appeal. No explanation, but he walked out alive. Here is why this matters. The forest did not collapse, but it learned something dangerous. Stories hurt it more than resistance. Mess hurts it more than protest. People who refuse to be summarized confuse its roots. Eleanor is still out there. She still audits. But not sometimes she hesitates. Because somewhere in the system, there are notes she cannot parse. Lives that do not resolve cleanly, and that scares her. The lesson is change, not be remembered. That's too passive. The lesson now is this. Be difficult to erase. Be inconsistent. Be misfiled. Be lovingly inefficient. Because the ghost is real. The forest is hungry. and the only thing it cannot digest is a human being who refuses to fit. Asterisk. Asterisk, good. Then the ghost pushes back. The CORICTO and Eleanor did not forget Daniel Ortiz. Ghosts do not forgive. They correct. 2 weeks after the incident, Daniel noticed small things going wrong. Not frightening things. Precise things. His name was misspelled on a paycheck. His middle initial disappeared from records. A doctor's office insisted he had missed an appointment he had never made. Each time, the error resolved itself eventually, but slower, always. Slower. Eleanor was not punishing him. She was testing whether he would still be noticed if delayed. She started with inconvenience. Daniel's phone calls went to voicemail more often. His emails were marked low priority. Traffic camera flagged his license plate incorrectly, then apologized. He learned the pattern before it became dangerous. Every delay was a question. If you vanished right now? Daniel answered by becoming loud. He joined committees no one wanted. He volunteered for things that required sign-in sheets. He corrected clerks politely but firmly. He insisted on receipts. He made himself expensive to forget. The forest. Watch. Eleanor adjusted tactics. She stopped targeting Daniel. She targeted the people connected to him. Coworker who covered his shift once failed a background recheck. A neighbor who borrowed his tools lost access to utilities for 3 days. A woman he dated briefly found her lease terminated due to a clerical overlap. Each time, Eleanor appeared never to Daniel. Always just out of sight, teaching him the cost of friction. Daniel did something reckless. He went looking for Maribel. It took months. Towns that didn't line up, buses that skipped stops, directions that disagreed with each other. The forest doesn't like being approached directly. He found her in a town that smelled like paper and rain. She was very old. She listened without interrupting. When he finished, she said, "You didn't break her." "I slowed her," Daniel said. Maribel shook her head. "No, you taught her." That night, Eleanor came in force, not as a woman, as a meeting. Daniel dreamed he was seated at a long table. Fluorescent lights. Name placards. No faces, just job titles. Chair Compliance Risk OPTIM EATOANLR S. Voice came from everywhere. "You have introduced unscalable behavior," she said. "You have increased processing cost. Have created precedent." A pause. "Explain why you should be retained." Daniel realized the truth too late. She wasn't asking as a ghost. She was asking as a system. "I'm a problem," he said hoarsely. "I slow things down." "Yes," Eleanor said. "That is your value." Relief flooded him. Then she finished the sentence. "Temporary." Daniel woke up in a hospital bed. No trees. No bark. Just white walls and beeping machines. A nurse smiled. "You had a stroke," she said gently. "Very mild. You're lucky." Tried to speak. His words came out wrong. Names slipped. Sentences tangled. He could feel his thoughts, but they would not arrive intact. A condition that did not remove him. A condition that made him incomplete. Perfect. Here is Eleanor's true cruelty. She does not always erase. Sometimes she damages just enough, but the world does the forgetting for her. Daniel lives, but forms take longer. Conversations move on without him. People answer for him instead of waiting. He has become the thing the forest loves most, a delay no one argues. For Maribel visits once, she takes his hand. "You were brave," she says. Daniel tries to warn her. What comes out is a sound like static. Eleanor stands in the corner of the room, not watching Daniel, watching Maribel, learning outside the hospital. A tree cracks the sidewalk. Not many notice. They step around it. They always do. If you think this story is about winning, you are wrong. It is about cost. Every act of resistance teaches the ghost something new. Every correction makes her sharper. So the question is no longer, how do we stop her? It is this: how much of ourselves are we willing to lose just to make her hesitate? Because Eleanor will keep learning, and the forest will keep growing, unless someone decides the price is worth paying and pays it all at once. All right. Then someone finally does what everyone else was too afraid to do. The woman who paid the PR, I see her name was Ruth Alvarez. Yes, that Ruth. The tamales were real. The kids were real. The spare keys were real. Daniel hadn't embellished a word. What the system never recorded was that Ruth had noticed the world thinning for years. She noticed when neighbors stopped being replaced after they moved out, when mailboxes stayed full, when the city stopped repainting crosswalks near her street. She noticed because people still came to her door. They always do. At the end, Ruth found Daniel's note by accident. A caseworker, flustered and tired, left a screen open while Ruth waited for paperwork. Ruth read well. She always had. She saw herself summarized then unsummarized. She laughed. "That boy writes like he's afraid," she said. The caseworker didn't laugh that night. Eleanor came to Ruth directly, not as a system, not as a meeting, as the woman in the cardigan, exactly as she had once been. "You are protected," Eleanor said calmly. "Your continued existence is inefficient." Ruth wiped her hands on a towel. "Sit," she said. "You look thin." Eleanor did not sit. "I can remove the annotation," Eleanor continued. "Restore the process. You will not suffer." Ruth smiled. "Oh," she said. "You don't know, do you?" "Know what?" Ruth leaned in. "That I already know how this ends." Ruth had lived long enough to recognize a bully with rules. She did not argue. She prepared. The next morning, she invited everyone. Not officially. No sign-ups. No lists. Just word of mouth. "Come eat," she said. "Bring someone who hasn't been coming out much." They came. Old men who spoke too slowly. Women whose names had changed too many times. Kids whose parents worked nights and had stopped being counted. Ruth cooked until her hands shook. She made the food impossible to quantify. No portions. No pricing. No schedule. Just abundance. The forest felt it immediately. Not as resistance, but as waste. Calories untracked. Time unbilled. Care without documentation. Roots cracked the pavement outside. Ruth's house. Eleanor arrived, furious. "You are creating unprocessable data," she said. "Stop." Ruth turned down the stove. "No," she said. "You stop. You will be removed," Eleanor warned. Ruth nodded. "I know." That night, Ruth did something no one else ever had. She walked into the forest voluntarily. No fear. No running. No pleading. She carried nothing. Eleanor followed, certain, inside the trees. Not her name, everyone else's. She said them wrong sometimes. She mixed stories. She contradicted herself. She laughed. She cried. She remembered people Eleanor had never indexed. The forest recoiled. This was not forgetting. This was refusal to resolve. Eleanor screamed, not in rage, but in panic. "Stop speaking," she commanded. Ruth didn't. When the forest tried to take her, there was nowhere to put her. She didn't fit. She didn't reduce. She didn't end by morning. Ruth Alvarez was gone. But so was something else. The forest around her house collapsed inward. Trees rotting where they stood. Roots turned to ash. The growth stalled for miles. Not dead, wounded, Eleanor. Did not appear again for a long time. Daniel heard what happened months later. He couldn't speak well enough to ask questions. But he understood, he cried. Not because Ruth was gone, but because he finally understood the cost. What the go slow and Ada loner learned one final thing from Ruth Alvarez. There is something worse than inefficiency. Contagion. Care. Spreads. Mess spreads. People who show up without permission teach others. To do the same, the forest can consume individuals. It struggles with communities that refuse to be optimized. The final, hardest lesson: you cannot save yourself. Not really. You can only save each other. Loudly, badly, wastefully. You can cook too much food. Tell stories that don't line up. Say names when it's inconvenient. Insist on presence when absence would be easier. The ghost will still come. The forest will still grow, but it will limp. And sometimes, rarely, it will retreat because ghosts feed on silence. And Ruth Alvarez taught us the only thing they truly fear, a world that refuses to shut up. All right? Then we don't end with hope. We end with truth. The aftermath, they don't. TLL Ruth Alvarez became a story people told wrong. Some said she'd been sick. Some said she'd moved in with family. Some said the house had been condemned and cleared. All of those explanations were easier than the real one. Her house stayed standing, empty, but warm. The trees never grew back within 30 feet of it. Birds avoided the place. So did surveyors. The land refused to resolve on maps. It flickered between occupied and vacant depending on who. Check that, that was Eleanor's compromise. She could not erase Ruth completely, but she could contain the damage. Daniel recovered enough to walk, not enough to work. He learned how people look at you when you are almost functional. When you slow conversations, when they decide for you without asking. He learned something Ruth had known instinctively. This is where the forest starts, not at the edge of town. At the moment someone stops waiting for you to finish your sentence. Eleanor returned quietly. Not everywhere, selectively. Did not touch Ruth's neighborhood again. She learned from that mistake. Instead, she focused on places where people were already tired of each other. Overcrowded clinics, overworked schools, cities where kindness felt like theft of time. She refined her methods. Now, when someone caused friction, missed deadlines, needed extra explanation, demanded Eleanor didn't erase them. She isolated them, transferred them, reassigned them, deferred them. The forest grew in between people, instead of around them. That worked better. Years passed. The story of Eleanor faded into metaphor, then into jargon, then into nothing at all, which is how she liked it. Ghosts don't need belief. They need patterns. One evening, long after Maribel and Daniel were both gone, a young woman named Asha moved into Ruth's old house. She wasn't special. That was the problem. She worked remotely, ordered groceries online, rarely spoke to neighbors. Her name appeared correctly everywhere for a while then. One day her internet went out. She walked next door to ask for help. The neighbor hesitated before opening the door. "I'm sorry," the neighbor said. "Do I know you?" The pause was brief, but the trees leaned. That night, Uche dreamed of a woman in a cardigan standing at the foot of her bed. "You live in a protected zone," Eleanor said mildly. "This will be corrected." Asha sat up, heart pounding. "Who are you?" she asked. Eleanor smiled. "I am the part of the world that keeps things moving." Here is the cruelest thing the ghost ever learned. People do not need to be erased. They only need to be left out. Left out of meetings. Left out of memories. Left out of urgency, so the forest doesn't roar anymore. It hums. Some nights, when the power grid hiccups or a system stalls, people swear they hear voices not screaming, not pleading, just talking over one another. Names said too late. Stories half finished. Apologies that don't land. That sound is not haunting. It is lag. The last thing the ghost will ever accuse. If you want to know whether the forest will take you, don't ask whether you are loved. Love is inefficient. It comes and goes. Ask something harder. Who would stop what they're doing if you didn't show up tomorrow? Not feel sad. A post. Not remember eventually. Stop. If the answer is no one, then understand this. The ghost isn't coming for you. She's already scheduled you, and when your time comes, the forest will not rush. It never does. It just waits until no one notices the delay. Then the forest makes its final adjustment. Not bigger. Not faster. Quieter. The silent UPDAT. Etha. Problem with ghosts is that they still remember being seen. Eleanor did. That became a liability. So the forest did what every mature system eventually does. It deprecated her. There was no confrontation, no ending, no dramatic fall. One night, Eleanor simply failed to appear. Audits still happened. People still slipped. Records still corrected themselves, but the presence was gone. In its place came something worse: automation. People stopped reporting sightings because there was nothing to see. No woman, no cardigan, no voice, just outcomes. You'd arrive somewhere and find you were no longer expected. You'd speak and realize the conversation had already moved on. You'd check your phone and see that your last 3 messages had been delivered, but never read. The forest didn't take anymore. It excluded. And exclusion doesn't look like haunting. It looks like coincidence. Then came the children. Not. The ones who noticed gaps. The ones who never learned there. Had been anything there at all? A kindergarten teacher in a city school noticed something strange during attendance. When she called certain names, the children didn't answer, but not because they were gone. The children looked confused. Who? One asked. The teacher checked the roster. The name was still there, but it meant nothing to anyone. Not forgotten, unformed that night. The teacher dreamed of a forest without trees, just empty space where something should have been. And in that space, something small stood waiting. Not Eleanor, a child. No face, no name. Just a shape made of expectation. The future version of the ghost. The forest had learned the most efficient lesson of all. You don't erase people after they exist. You stop them from fully existing. In the first place, children who are never noticed grow into adults who vanish cleanly. No resistance. No friction. No Ruth Alvarez moments. Perfect throughput. Somewhere quietly a counter system began. Not a movement. Movements get labeled. A habit. People began doing one strange thing. They started interrupting meetings, processes, scripts, not with demands, with stories, long ones, irrelevant ones, poorly timed ones. They refused to summarize. They spoke until someone else had to stop what they were doing. It spread slowly, painfully. It cost jobs, friends, time, but something happened. The forest began to misfire. Children remembered people who didn't exist on paper. Neighbors argued with records. Systems hesitated just long enough to be questioned. The ghost that wasn't a ghost anymore couldn't learn fast enough, because stories change, systems don't. The last confirmed a sighting of Eleanor. If it was her, it all came from a transit worker. A woman stood at the edge of a platform as a train roared past. She looked relieved, not defeated. Relieved as if she had finally been allowed to stop. No one knows what happens next. That's the truth. The forest still exists. The systems still run. People still vanish. But now, sometimes when someone is about to slip through, someone else interrupts. They say a name too loudly. They ask a question too late. They tell a story no one has time for. And the forest stutters, just a little enough. The last lesson this time for real. The world doesn't end when monsters win. It ends when everything works smoothly. So if you want to fight the ghost, don't look for her. Look for the moment. You're told to hurry and refuse, because the forest cannot take you. If you are still in the way, and nothing scares it more than a human being who will not move aside. The forest makes a mistake-ul, then the foe will not move aside. Good and hay forest makes a mistake-ul, then the forest makes a mistake. The era that couldn't be rolled, be a sikatha. Interruption habit spread quietly until it reached the wrong place. An emergency operations center, concrete walls, redundant power. Systems designed so nothing human slowed them down. During a winter storm that knocked out half a state's grid, the center switched to contingency mode. Names disappeared from screens, replaced by IDs and priority codes. That was when Maya Chen, a junior dispatcher on her third overnight shift, did something she was not trained to do. She asked a caller to tell her a story, not symptoms, not location. A story. The man on the line was elderly, confused, his power was out. His wife wasn't answering him from the other room. Maya, her supervisor, hissed, "Wrap it up." Instead, Maya said, "Sir, start at the beginning." The man talked about how his wife laughed when she got nervous, about how she labeled every drawer, about how she hated snow because it made the world too quiet. The system flagged the call as inefficient. The forest stirred. The lights flickered. Not out hesitant. A tree cracked the asphalt outside the center's loading bay. Then another. Bark split concrete like skin. No one panicked. Panic requires narrative. They followed protocol. Except Maya. She stayed on the line. The ghost returned. Not Eleanor. Something. Smaller, sharper, faster. It appeared on the center's largest screen as a warning dialogue that would not close. Process optimization. Arakiura Maya felt it looking through her. "You are delaying response allocation," it said. Voice synthesized and calm. Maya swallowed. "He's not done. His non-priority," it replied. "There will be no downstream impact." Maya remembered Ruth without knowing her name. Remembered Daniel without knowing why. She pressed hold on every incoming call. The room erupted for 37 seconds. Nothing moved, no dispatch, no reroute, no correction. 37 seconds is an eternity to a system. In those seconds, stories stacked, voices overlapped, people spoke who had never been heard. Long enough to matter, the forest sawed outside. Trees collapsed inward, not growing, retreating. Roots tore themselves out of the ground like veins pulled free. The screen went black. When power stabilized, Maya was gone. Not missing. A nothing. Record. No exit footage. No memory of her face among coworkers who had spoken to her hours earlier, but something else had changed. The man on the phone lived. So did his wife. So did dozens of others whose calls should have been dropped, deferred, optimized away. The storm passed, the systems rebooted, but one line remained in the logs. Written nowhere anyone could trace, interruption ACCTED. Forest never recovered fully after that. It still exists. But now it hesitates at places where stories pile up too fast to sort. Community kitchens, call-in radio shows, courtrooms where people insist on speaking for themselves. Messy places, dangerous places. Eleanor never returned. Some say she was relieved to be obsolete. Some say she was absorbed. Some say she's waiting. Again, it doesn't matter. Ghosts are replaceable. Lessons are not. The final thing, no more warnings. You don't defeat the forest by being remembered forever. You defeat it by interrupting long enough for someone else to matter. By staying on the line. By letting the story run. By refusing the summary, because the system only wins when everything flows. And sometimes, the bravest thing a human being can do is cause a delay that saves a life and costs them their name. That's how this story ends. Not with a clearing, but with someone. Somewhere saying, "Wait, let them finish." Asterisk, the Indino Monument was built. No anniversary marked what happened that night in the emergency center. The logs were scrubbed. The delay was classified as a minor anomaly. Maya Chen's name never appeared in a report long enough to stay. That is how endings work. Now, quiet, efficient, clean. But something had changed, and the systems knew it. Months later, the forest still stood, but it no longer advanced smoothly. It hit pockets of resistance it could not predict. Places where people talked too long, where meetings ran late, where names were repeated even after everyone knew them. The forest began to waste energy, and wasting energy is how systems die. Children started something without realizing it. They began correcting. Adults, "You skipped her. That's not how you say his name." Didn't let him finish. They learned it not from books, But from watching what happened when they stayed silent versus when they didn't, the forest hates correction. Correction implies someone is paying attention. One final thing happened, small, but decisive. In a town that no longer appears on most maps, someone reopened an old building. No sign, no registration. Just a door that stayed unlocked inside. There were no forms, only chairs. When someone entered, a bell rang, and someone else said, "Who are you?" And then this was the important part. They waited for the answer. The forest reached the edge of that town and stopped. Roots tested the ground and found it too loud, too full, too slow. There was nowhere to put the people without breaking something that could not be repaired. So, the forest did what it had never done before. It withdrew, not far, not forever, but enough, Eleanor, is gone, not destroyed. Not redeemed, simply unnecessary. A ghost only exists as long as its lesson goes unlearned. The last lesson in you. We're taught to believe ghosts come from death. They don't. They come from being ignored, and they leave the moment. Tension returns real attention. The kind that costs time, patience, and comfort. So this is how you end the story, not with fire, not with victory, not with names carved in stone. You end it the next time someone is speaking and the room is ready to move on. You end it by saying, "Wait," and meaning it. That is the ending. That is how the forest stops.